This episode is sponsored by LastPass. Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn, also known as the life support that is keeping the Nintendo 3DS alive. For some reason. I'm sorry, but no, not extra epic. I think the question we're going to be asking here is, why? Why does this exist? Didn't we all want the 3DS to die like a few years ago? The Switch is doing fantastically and will continue to do so for years to come, so the port of a nearly 9-year-old Wii game on a dying console, that just seems weird and pointless. But you know what's not weird and pointless? Today's sponsor, LastPass. I think I'm getting a little bit better at the whole sponsorship integration thing. You know it's pretty annoying when you go online trying to purchase the latest video game that you want, and you try to log into your account, and you just forgot your password, and then it becomes a whole ordeal trying to get it back. That's no fun. Well, luckily, LastPass is here for you. No longer do you have to remember any of your passwords and risk having to deal with those forgot password questions like what your grandmother's maiden name was. Instead, with this service, you have a universal account that keeps track of everything for you, and they fill out your login information whenever you need it. And all of this is for free. There are no limits to how many passwords you can store. This can be used across multiple devices and apps, and you can even keep some secure information on your account that's not even passwords. No more getting locked out of your precious accounts. No more having to reset passwords and adding a number to your existing ones. Put your passwords on autopilot with LastPass. To learn more about this service, click on the link down below. Thanks again, LastPass, for sponsoring this video. And now, some Pink Boy. Okay, so I am the Kirby guy, right? I guess that means that doesn't matter how pointless this game is, I gotta talk about it. I literally have no other choice. If you look back a few years ago, I already did a video on the original Kirby's Epic Yarn on Wii, and yeah, long story short, I thought the game was pretty fantastic. The game does lack the mechanics that make up a typical Kirby game, but what we still got here was a super charming adventure with an awesome art style. It wasn't just that the characters were made out of yarn and you can see through them, it was that the entire world was one giant arts and crafts project. There were so many arguments about this game being kiddie, and I mean, to be fair, the story narration is done as if it was like a father telling their kid a bedtime story or something like that, so yeah, it is incredibly childish, but it does fit the theme. But it didn't really matter though, because at the end of the day, you are still the pink puffball. You are still raising hell. It does not matter how you spin the plot. And need I remind you, the game feels like pants. And now with the power of the Nintendo 3DS, you can feel the world that feels like pants. And then when you're done, you can put it inside your pants. Why didn't they put that on the back of the box? That was so easy.
Pants.
So for those of you who are unaware of how this game works, it is a somewhat standard 2D platformer where instead of Kirby having his typical inhaling and copy ability mechanics, he now wields a whip made out of yarn to handle any obstacle that stands in his way. And for those of you out there who are aware of how this game operates, the first thing that you're probably noticing is, this looks a whole lot worse. I mean, to be fair, it was obvious that when making the jump to the 3DS, it was going to inherently look worse. The thing is though, when you have a game where one of its main selling points is the awesome art style, why port it to a console that's gonna pump out weaker results? You see, let's take a look at the original Luigi's Mansion. Now, should they have ported this to the 3DS? Probably not, but at the very least, it did look really good on the GameCube, and work was done to make sure it still looked good on the 3DS. It made that jump smoothly. With Epic Yarn though, don't get me wrong, it still does have that great art style, it's just a shame that it wasn't given a better opportunity to shine through. But of course, the big question whenever any game gets ported to another console is what are the differences? What is different between this and the Wii version? And for as much as they added to it, they kinda took stuff out as well. Now firstly, I guess people complained that Epic Yarn, despite being designed to not include them, now has abilities akin to the series staple copy abilities. Certain enemies are just placed randomly throughout the levels, and they're holding special hats. You one-wrap the enemy, you get the hat, you get the ability. It's fairly typical Kirby flair, honestly. With one of them, you get the ability to craft yarn balls whenever you want. You can create a little tornado to suck in beads. That's kind of useful. You can wield a damn sword, making the act of destroying yarn-based creatures even more incredibly violent. And there's a couple more. And honestly, this kinda ruins the entire point of the original game. All they do here is make a game that's already considered very easy a whole lot easier. And there's no way to disable them. You just got to avoid using them if you want to play the game like the original. But if the difficulty is a concern for you, and I know it was for a whole lot of people, there is a brand new devilish mode. Oh no, that freaky devil scared me. Okay, so this mode was introduced with the intention of giving the players an option for a hard mode, which is really cool. Like, you actually have a life bar in this one. 5 hit points, and then if you lose all of them, you start the entire level all over again. Cool, I think that's what people wanted. But then there are these devil monsters that pop up every now and then, and like, they just suck. And no, not in the funny, haha, Kirby sucks, am I right? Kinda way. I know where you're going with that, commenters. They're just not good. You go about your way playing the level like normal, but now there's like an animated GIF that's floating around the screen at all times that can attack you occasionally. And you can attack it too. Honestly, it's totally recommended. Not just because their presence is annoying, which it is, but also because whenever they're on screen, it plays this really not great song, and it plays the entire time until you take them out, muting the original soundtrack, which is still fantastic. Now maybe it's because I've already played this game multiple times, but this doesn't feel like a challenge. It's just the standard game, and you now have a pest buzzing in your ear every 60 seconds. Alright, so we're gonna add a hard mode to Super Mario Bros. 3, right? So just play like you normally would, and then the sun is gonna be in every single level. That sounds great. Those are really the only two changes to the core gameplay, and neither of them would feel as unnecessary as they do if they didn't at least give you the option to mix and match for your preferred playstyle. Like personally, I want no abilities, no devils, and yeah, give me a health bar. That would be great. But now, during my playthrough, I just actively avoided devilish mode because that was annoying, and then I guess just used the abilities anyway because they are fun to use, even if they go against the intentions of the original game. The co-op was removed in this one too. The original worked fine for co-op with its slower pace, but now Prince Fluff just like occasionally pops up, gives you some beads, and flies away. Okay, that seems like a weird thing to remove. The 3DS can do co-op, so why not put in the time? That seems weird. The Wii version also had sections that utilized the Wii remote controller with motion control and pointer functionality. For any of the parts that use the motion controls, whatever, you just use the circle pad, that's fine, but you also use the circle pad for the pointer stuff too. Why? It's bad enough that we're not even using the 3D part of the 3DS anymore, on top of the lack of co-op, but now we're just gonna ignore the touchscreen too? Simply put, everyone, the original game is still here and it's still fun, but as a port, this had absolutely no love and no care put into it. This is a glorified ROM hack of the original Wii version that got compressed onto a 3DS cartridge. They did add some side content to this one, so that's pretty nice. The Wii version was pretty different for a Kirby game in the sense of it didn't have minigames. Typically, every Kirby game has some minigames, and now with extra epic yarn, this game falls right back in line with the rest of the franchise. In DDD Go Go Go, you run through stages, collect a ton of beads. It's pretty similar to the Poochie stages that were added in the 3DS port of Yoshi's Woolly World. They're more or less the same thing, honestly. And then there's Slash and Bead. Basically, you do the same thing once again, but they're slower paced, and you slash enemies with Meta Knight's sword instead. Both of these minigames are okay. They only have a couple of stages each, they don't last very long, they lock most of these modes behind main story mode progression. At least they have solid music, I'll give them that. Once again, they experiment with doing something kinda different with the King DDD theme, with a really cool result, but that's all I got. And just when you thought this story couldn't get any better, there's no 3D, there's no touchscreen support, there's no co-op. Oh, but thank goodness, they do have Street Pass in the apartment creation mode. They even went ahead and made a bunch of new furniture that you can place in them. And you know, I guess sharing these with others in Street Pass would have been really cool, years ago, but personally, I stopped taking my 3DS outside a long time ago, so I won't be able to take advantage of this feature. Oh, and this mode does use the touchscreen. Come on, man. The bottom line here is none of the changes made to this version of Kirby's Epic Yarn make it worth double dipping for if you've already played the original. Extra epic, huh? Well, that is certainly subjective. Now, if you've never played Kirby's Epic Yarn and don't have access to a Wii or Wii U to play the original, then sure, go on ahead, it's totally fine. It's just not the version that I would recommend, especially when the 3DS is nearing death. Well, we certainly hope so, at least. But it is worth noting that when you count up all of the physical games, the digital games, the virtual console games, the one Super Nintendo game that you can get only with the new 3DS, the one Game Boy Advance game that you can get only as a 3DS ambassador, all of that together, the Nintendo 3DS is home to 16 different Kirby games. That's insane, and that doesn't count the 4 DS games that you can play due to the 3DS's backwards compatibility. Kirby is a legend. Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn did need to exist. Nobody's gonna dispute that. No one's really gonna go out and buy it. I don't think anyone really cares anymore. You know that Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story remake that came out? That's now infamous for being one of the worst selling Mario games of all time. This is gonna have the same exact effect on the Kirby franchise, but it is what it is. At the end of the day, it's just one more game to add to the 3DS's super large lineup, and it'll just make the console look even better when you look back at it retroactively. What is neat though is that at the time of this video at the very least, this is the last game that Nintendo is publishing for this console, so it's kind of historic in that regard. Please stop making 3DS games. Sincerely, everybody.